Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So this Friday, I will once again be reporting live in front of a studio audience, and hopefully we'll have guests. What is happening this Friday, you may be asking yourself? Well, Keenvention is happening Friday through Sunday, October 30th through November 1st. I am actually the opening act and the closing act for Keenvention 2015. If you are in the New England area, it's not that far to head over to Keen. Online ticket sales are going on through the 28th at noon. Noon Eastern Time on the 28th is the last time you can purchase those tickets online, or you can buy them at the door. Keenvention.info is where you can find more information about Keenvention. See the list of all of the panels, all of the events that are happening. There's a bonfire that's happening Friday night. There's a Halloween party that's happening on Saturday. It's actually the Halloween dance party, costume and dance party. And if you show up, you will not recognize me. Not just because I've lost 120 pounds, but because the costume that I am wearing, I'll be wearing a mask. So, like, you'll be able to see my eyes and my mouth, but I don't think anyone will correctly identify what I am. They might know, like, a genre of, oh, you're something in this sort of genre, but they will not know who specifically I am dressed up as at the Halloween costume and dance party. So if you're in the area, come on out. It's only like $60 if you buy the tickets online before the 28th, which is Wednesday. So Wednesday before noon, final time to buy them online. You can buy tickets at the door, but there's a slight increase in the price at the door. Keenvention.info. Hope to see you there. So now let me jump into the news. And before I do, I just want to preface this with the reason I started digging into this story a little bit is because I saw some headlines, or not really headlines, but I saw people sharing stories about this. And, well, they were manipulating the truth a little bit in what they were posting on Facebook. I saw people saying tiny homes are now illegal in Denver, tiny homes destroyed, people arrested in Denver because tiny homes are outlawed in Denver. So I decided, you know what, let me look into this a little bit and find out exactly what is going on. And, well, let me first begin with a news story from ABC 7 out of Denver. TheDenverChannel.com is the website, and they report the Denver police arrested 10 people and destroyed tiny homes that were set up by activists for the homeless at Sustainability Park on Saturday. Activists with Denver Homeless Out Loud were in the process of setting up a tiny home village to be occupied and managed by homeless people, according to organizers. The group posted photos of activists constructing the homes on Saturday, and one of the activists said, "Today, hundreds of people came out to Sustainability Park in the Curtis Park neighborhood of Denver to build a tiny home village where 3 urban farms are being displaced to build an apartment development." So what we have here is, yes, 10 people were arrested. Tiny homes were destroyed. Now, before I continue here, you might be asking exactly what is a tiny home. You may have heard the term before, and some people will define tiny home differently than others, but the generally accepted definition of tiny home is a house or a dwelling that is less than 400 square feet. I've heard some people say that it has to be less than 200, but the largest number that I've heard in reference to tiny home is 400 square feet. So anything that is below 400 square feet is considered a tiny home. And again, some people will say, no, 400 square feet is way too big. Other people would say 200 square feet is way too small. There's one guy that has a tiny home that I think it's like 100 square feet. Now, some of these, they also have lofts, so that technically there's more than 100 square feet of usable space, because you've got the loft where the sleeping area is, and, you know, so it would realistically wind up being like 140 square feet, because if you count a two-story house, you don't say that the house only has the number of square feet on the lower floor. Even if the upper floor is only sleeping quarters, you count all of it. But I digress. So they were building these tiny homes, and they don't have dimensions of how big they were building these, but there are some photos, and I would say it looks probably like about an 8 by 12 with a loft. So 8 foot by 12 foot, so 96 square foot with the loft. So, you know, that would definitely qualify as a tiny house. And if you're homeless, then any kind of shelter is going to be appropriate or acceptable, or rather it should be. But I digress and continue with the article. The organizers of the Denver Homeless Out Loud posted a press release on Sunday, and I'll read parts of that later. But they, here on Denver Channel, the denverchannel.com, they quote part of it. Due to zoning and code constraints, they have not been able to find a legal place to put up the houses. The statement reads in part, quote, in explaining why they had chosen this site on which to establish the village, the group recounted how the Denver Housing Authority, which owns the property, so this was built on publicly owned property. It wasn't land owned by the organization. So this is another one of those things to where people were sort of, mischaracterizing the truth about what had actually happened, where they said, like, tiny homes are being destroyed. You don't have a right to do what you want on your land. Well, no, this was on public property. But again, I continue. The group recounted how the Denver Housing Authority, which owns the property, has torn down hundreds of low-income housing units, and after allowing the Urban Farming Cooperative to use the land for a few years, has agreed this year to sell the land to a private developer who will build multifamily housings that will support gentrification in the Curtis Park area, but be far beyond the reach of those for whom the Denver Housing Authority is supposed to exist. The Denver Housing Authority, by the way, has filed a complaint with the police, saying that the people would not leave the property. Police spokesman Tyrone Campbell says police gave the group several orders to disperse before making the arrest. And there's a little bit more news here from the denverchannel.com's report, including another couple of quotes from some of the activists, and then I'll get into the release from Denver Homeless Out Loud before explaining why grit and determination might not be such a good thing.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to ZOG.ninja to get your copy of Hypercronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hypercronius. ZOG.ninja. Code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
So before I continue with the story about the tiny house activists, or rather the activists who were building tiny houses getting arrested, I want to make sure that I tell you about a place that you can keep your money in the free market. That is, if you advocate for free market money. Do you promote Bitcoin as an alternative in a fiat-centric world? If so, you need Spendabit in your arsenal. It's the search engines for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spendabit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend a bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin-accepting merchant, like I am, ask about their merchant suites to reach even more customers. Spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. So jumping back now into the article from thedenverchannel.com, which is the website for ABC 7 News in Denver, Colorado. One of the activists from Denver Homeless Out Loud said Denver Public Works destroyed, threw into dump trucks and carted away the homes that had been so badly needed by houseless people and so lovingly constructed by those who would have lived there and their supporters. Organizers said police arrested, and then they give the names of the 10 people. Police told 7 News that they were arrested for trespassing. One of the organizers wrote, "We will not give up. We will keep fighting to defend people's right to housing." Denver police said that they have returned some of the temporary homes that were confiscated. So it's sort of one of those serendipitous things that I have this article about the people that were trying to build tiny houses for the homeless. And, well, one of the organizers says, "We will not give up." And I've also got the article about, well, why grit and determination might not be such a wonderful thing after all. But I'll tell you about the grit and determination in just a moment after I jump into this release, or rather this sort of press release thing that was put out by Denver Homeless Out Loud. So they have their own recounting of the events. They say last night on Saturday, October 24th, around 70 police department and Denver Sheriff's Department officers, including SWAT units under orders from Mayor Michael Hancock, descended on Sustainability Park and arrested 10 community members who, along with many others, were in the process of setting up a tiny home village to be occupied and managed by houseless people. The arrest on charges of trespassing were followed by the destruction and removal of several tiny homes, which the group had constructed for the homeless to live in. The group, led by Denver Homeless Out Loud and composed of houseless people and supporters, had been constructing tiny houses and trying to find a location for the village for over a year, but due to zoning and code constraints, they had not been able to find a legal place to put the houses. Contrary to reports by Channel 9 News, this action and the establishment of Resurrection Village have nothing to do with Occupied Denver. On Saturday, during a Permaculture Action Day event, the group brought tiny homes that they had built or were in the process of building onto the Sustainability Park site. They announced their intentions to establish a tiny home village, which they named Resurrection Village, after the similarly named Tent City, which Martin Luther King Jr.'s Poor People's Human Rights Campaign built in Washington, D.C., and they then talk about how that was a demand for higher wages and decent housing. Continuing on, in the afternoon, while constructing tiny homes on site, the group was visited by a representative of the Denver Housing Authority, as well as by the developer. By 9 p.m., with police helicopters circling overhead, the officers made the arrest, and the Denver Public Works destroyed, threw in dump trucks, and carted away the homes that had been so badly needed. And they finish their release by, again, stating, "We will not give up. We will keep fighting to defend people's right to housing for the sake of the future residents of Resurrection Village and those who were arrested. We must all stand together now. Stay tuned for updates on the story and information about how you can support our next steps in this struggle." So, why is grit and determination something that might not be great and wonderful after all? Well, scientists, and you've got to love scientists, and I mean that sincerely. I am not saying that in sort of a facetious manner. I mean that sincerely. You have to love scientists because they will look at things that sometimes people sort of take for granted or don't really think about too much. And in this case, they did 3 tests to determine grit and perseverance. And, well, let me just jump into the story. This from BusinessInsider.com. They begin by saying, "Grit is good," or at least that's the advice most college counselors, middle managers, spelling bee coaches, and most anyone who's ever advised anyone of anything will give you. American culture in particular esteems the Jobs of the world, both the biblical and the Stevial, as in Steve Jobs, who sticks to it when everything is going wrong. Psychologists, too, have long viewed perseverance as a plus. Writing in Science magazine in 1907, psychologist William James called upon his peers to study how certain people seem to draw on inner strengths to accomplish great feats. Writing, "The human individual lives usually far within his limits. He possesses powers of various sorts which he habitually fails to use. He energizes below his maximum, and he behaves below his optimum. The habit of the inferiority to our full set, that is bad." Then again, amid all the exhortations to be too legit to quit, what if another song actually serves as a better guide to life, one whose message is less demanding, perhaps, and understands what it's like to have F reserves hovering dangerously near zero? What if it's more important to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run? For a recent study published in the Journal of Research in Personality, researchers from the University of Southern California and Northeastern University put hundreds of participants through a series of 3 studies on grit. In each, the researchers quizzed subjects about how gritty they are, based on how much they agree with statements such as, "Setbacks don't discourage me," and "I finish whatever I begin." The first test was a set of anagrams or word scrambles, which participants were rewarded for solving by being entered into a $100 lottery for each correct answer. Sprinkled amid the doable anagrams were 16 unsolvable words and 21 very difficult words like Kismet. That's Kismet. The participants who ranked higher on the grit assessment attempted fewer anagrams overall, a sign they did not skip the difficult or unsolvable ones like their less determined peers. And there's more, so stay tuned. That is, if you're gritty and determined, or maybe if you're not.
In 1999, Darryl W. Perry began a search for traditional values which led him down a path to the ideas of liberty. He tells the story in A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. Of the book, Dr. Brian Sovereign says, sometimes it's funny and sometimes I think it's crazy, but it's always authentic. Find A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty by Darryl W. Perry on Facebook, read reviews on Amazon, ask for A Rebel's Journey wherever books are sold, or visit arebelsjourney.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
The article here from Business Insider on grit and determination continues. It says, next came a computer game. Or, you know what, before I explain the computer game, let me back up, because this is a sentence talking about the anagram puzzle. This is a sentence that I had to sort of reread to myself a couple of times to understand. So let me reread the paragraph here. It says, sprinkled among the doable anagrams were 16 that were unsolvable and 21 that were very difficult, like Kismet, Kismet. The participants who ranked higher on the grit assessment attempted to solve fewer anagrams than the people that ranked lower on the grit assessment, and the researchers believe that this is a sign that they did not skip the difficult or unsolvable problems like their less determined peers, meaning they didn't prioritize. They did not say, I can't figure this one out, let me go to the next one. Nope, I'm going to stay on this problem, and I'm going to stay on this problem till I solve it. I don't care that the next one is going to be easier. I'm staying on problem number 2. The next exercise was a computer game exercise, which researchers rigged such that some participants would feel as though they were losing for much of the game. The grittier subjects worked harder when they were losing, but not so hard when they were winning. For the final test, the researchers gave the subjects a math game, which was also rigged so that some of the participants would feel as though they were fighting an uphill battle. They also gave the participants an offer. When things got tough, they could either drop out of the experiment and get $1 for their troubles, or they could continue and they would get $2 if they won, but $0 if they lost. The people who scored higher on the grit assessment did not solve any more math problems than the less gritty counterparts, even though they felt more optimistic about the test than the others. They were, however, more likely to continue the game even when they were losing, even though they risked walking away with nothing. Absolutely nothing. It would seem then that grit comes with a downside. Gritty people stick with the task before them, but sometimes it's at the expense of their own financial gain and even overall performance. This kind of costly persistence has many applications outside the lab. Now, before I continue with the article here from Business Insider, just a little bit of insight that I came away with this was, yes, sometimes people that are determined and gritty, they put success above everything else. It's the guy who is $500,000 down at the slot table. I don't, or the poker table, the craps table, whatever, or even a slot machine. He's just sitting. Well, eventually, I'm going to hit the jackpot. Eventually, I'll wind up winning. I'll just go all in, and hopefully, I win. And they wind up. They're looking for the reward at the end instead of doing some sort of counterbalance of, wait a second, I've already lost all of this. I should just end it now. I should just get up and walk away from the table. As the article mentioned at the beginning, the Kenny Rogers song, The Gambler, you've got to know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your money sitting at the table. There's plenty time for counting when the dealing's done. And that's the thing that a lot of gritty people do not understand, is they are just so focused on I have to finish, that they sort of let the wisdom of this isn't the hill that I want to die on. They just lose focus of there are other fights for other days. And they are so determined to win this battle that they forget about the larger picture. They forget about the war, if you will. The article here from Business Insider continues. Think of an SAT test, or if you unschooled your children or you were unschooled yourself, just pretend for a second that you're thinking about an SAT test. I realize how much it pains you, because thinking back 20 years ago to high school, sometimes pains me as well, but there's definitely a good analogy here. It says, think of the SAT test, where it behooves the test taker to skip over problems that are too hard in order to answer more questions correctly. Or consider the perks of buying the frozen Trader Joe's egg rolls for the party, rather than wrangling a pot of hot oil in your studio apartment. The key is knowing when laziness pays off. And I personally take issue with the use of the term laziness here, because it's not lazy to know when it's not worth fighting a certain battle. That is not laziness, that is wisdom. The article continues. Gail Lucas, one of the researchers with USC's Institute for Creative Technologies, said in a statement, right now there's an effort to push everyone to be more gritty. There's no reason to make people grittier, but it's important to know when to quit and reevaluate rather than blindly push through. And I completely agree. There are certain things, like when I did the triathlon over the summer, one of the things that pushed me to finish was, I'm going to finish this. It wasn't something to where, like if I didn't finish, I would wind up, like losing money, or if I did finish, I would wind up gaining money. But it was, motivating to me of, I'm going to do this so that I can say that I did. So that there was a lot more sort of self-esteem on the line than any financial gain. So it was just something of, I said I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. It cost me nothing other than the registration fee, which I had basically forfeited by the time I showed up on the day. So it cost me nothing to keep moving forward to finish. Yes, there were a couple of times, like when I was in the lake and I started having a leg cramp and my shoulder hurt and I couldn't really swim properly. It would have been incredibly easy for me to finish, but a little part of me would have, sort of died had I quit. So it was my determination, I'm going to do this because I can do it. So on the one hand, grit and determination is good, but so is wisdom. There are certain battles that I don't want to deal with. That, would I love to see the federal government go away before Keenvention? Absolutely. I know it's not going to happen, so I'm not going to fight that battle right now. I can fight that battle, in a month. I can try fighting that battle, over the next 5 years. The road to freedom is not a wind sprint. The road to freedom is not even a marathon. It's like one of these super, super, super marathons. It's like that 100-mile road race where you have to just keep at it. You can't get it tomorrow, but persevere, but be wise about it. So yes, willpower, good, but so is wisdom. Don't forget, every Wednesday's the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions, AMA@FTPradio.com.